What is up guys, Deadset here. Today we'll talk about set dungeons once more, but this time we'll focus on the mighty barbarians and the 4 challenges set before them. As always, I hope the mastery banner on my character's back lends me some credibility. Let's go over them. I won't go at length on the subjects of the overall purpose and vision of set dungeons, as I did so already in the Crusader overview, but briefly, I strongly approve of the way set dungeons are integrated into the world, with good hints encouraging light exploration. I like the idea of static layouts and a puzzle-like approach to solving them, even if they don't succeed as teaching tools for the particular set. And another 4 masteries down the line, I continue to dislike the monster tuning. I reaffirm my point that set dungeons need a stronger identity as either a teaching tool for the set or a puzzle to solve through knowledge of game mechanics. Right now they reside somewhere in the middle, and taking a stronger stance in either direction would make set dungeons more recognizable and meaningful. Before I move on to the particular sets, there is another minor gripe that I have, even though I'm sure the choices were intentional. One of my favorite features of Diablo as an action RPG is its vast bestiary, but of all the monsters that could be picked, the majority of the Barbarian dungeons feature imps and fallen that run away at every opportunity. This is evil. Pure evil. Alright, onto the dungeons. If I can point out with absolute certainty one Barbarian dungeon that will not teach you how to play your set, it is definitely the Immortal King dungeon. Impossible to complete by design through any of the widespread Immortal King builds. This dungeon presents you with a curious obstacle. The only way to win is not to fight at all. My problem is not with the challenge in the slightest. There's some cleverness involved in recognizing that the ancients have to do the fighting for you, while you scramble to spend fury in the background to keep Wrath of the Berserker going. I suppose there's variations too, as far as trying to complete the dungeon with a ranged Seismic Slam or Ancient Spear build, but there's no way to know or care about optimal behavior with no leaderboard attached to the challenge. Sending Call of the Ancients as frontline and using Dust Devils to mop up stragglers seemed the most reliable way of completion. In summation, I find the dungeon fun conceptually, but completely divorced from the idea of a set tutorial. I can scarcely call it more than a test of wits when half the skill and passive choices I make are incompatible with greater or even normal rifting. I found the Raycore dungeon rather challenging, well representative of the dedicated set and its strengths. You are presented with a sprawling Keep Depths area, whose long and narrow corridors match Furious Charge well. You have to get acquainted with several targeted reworks, chiefly the Raycore stacking charges and Fury dumping with Ancient Spear, as well as the movement speed from Pound of Flesh to boost you through the massive dungeon. I will give credit to the Raycore challenge for not penalizing your good damage, an irritating problem that is not spared in other dungeons. However, I found it suffering from the Roland's dungeon symptom, where the secondary challenge of hitting 15 plus different enemies at once does not really correspond to actual Raycore gameplay. The frantic pace of Raycore builds rarely results in taking time to line up massive shots like this. If the goal of the set dungeon is to teach, I would rather see an objective to never run out of Furious Charge charges. This is far more lethal and important to grasp than sniping a dozen enemies. Easily the least challenging of the 4 dungeons, Wrath of the Wastes sports a single redeeming feature, the really cool Secheron swinging traps that I hope remain in the final version. An overall set dungeon grievance of mine is especially noticeable here. Monsters are tuned to such weakness that they die when you frown at them, let alone Whirlwind. This makes one of the secondary objectives, not taking any physical damage, trivial, but at least you would suppose it hampers the other, which is grouping 10 enemies to rend at once. However, any barb worth his salt knows what Ground Stomp with Wrenching Smash does, and slowing enemies down with a level 25 plus Bane of the Trapped provides plenty of time to line up an easy pull and stun. In its current form, I sincerely doubt you would need more than 2 or 3 attempts to master this dungeon, which is not too bad by itself, but it also teaches you nothing of the set gameplay. Funnily, by putting you on the defensive, the Immortal King Set dungeon can teach you more about Dust Devil's manipulation than the Waste One itself. Tricky in a similar fashion to the Raycore dungeon, sheer length and pesky enemy types, the Might of the Earth challenge still takes the crown as the harder one, with a twisting multi-level layout, pushing the 4 minute and 30 seconds timer to its limits. This dungeon forces you to learn plenty of 2.4 additions. The necessity to combo leap into ground stomp into earthquake on elites is sometimes finicky, though that could be attributed to PTR lag, but it's punishing in a good way and forces you to think of your tools. Elites often spawn too close for a proper earthquake cooldown, so you quickly grow to appreciate threatening shout with the new Blade of the Tribes. Then you need to keep freezing so you remember Ingion. Then you need to get around fast so you read up on Pound of Flesh. There's probably more solutions than those I listed, and that makes it a well-designed dungeon in my book. A major dislike that I will keep harping on until it's addressed is needing to tone down my damage in order to master the dungeon. Removing items to avoid one-shotting elites leaves a sour taste and doesn't mesh with the mastery title at all, stripping myself of the very gear and gem choices that I've shown skill and forethought in picking out. Well, that about covers it for my impressions of the Barbarian set dungeons. Mirroring my impressions from the Crusader video, I see the potential in the set dungeon concept, but they lack identity, too narrow to be game knowledge puzzles and too exotic to be considered teaching tools. I'm curious to see how they take shape over the course of the 2.4 PTR. I hope you enjoyed the video and look forward to the set dungeon reviews of the remaining classes coming over the next few days. Talk to me on Twitter and Facebook that I linked below, and I'll see you guys next time.